For most people working in San Francisco's financial district, Monday mornings were depressing. But not for Melissa Johnson. She had promised herself that she would walk with her head held high every morning, as long as there were no wrinkles etched on her forehead. Gazing at her reflection in the computer screen, she took a deep breath. Today was a special day. The engagement ring from James, her boyfriend of 3 years, sparkled on the ring finger of her left hand. Melissa smiled softly as she called her mother. "Mom, I have something important to tell you." Her mother Barbara's voice always carried a hint of tension, as if she were afraid someone might overhear her. "I'm busy right now. I'm swamped preparing for Victoria Hilton's garden party. You know Victoria is the most influential woman in town." Melissa quietly closed her eyes. Of course she knew. Her mother uttered those words, most influential woman, at least once a week. It wasn't about actual power or wealth, it was merely a phrase that reflected Barbara's imaginary social status. "I understand. But Mom, I got engaged to James." There was a moment of silence on the other end, followed by Barbara's cold laugh. "Oh, to that real estate agent? Melissa, you always sell yourself short. Look at Vanessa. She's dating a lawyer. A promising lawyer." Melissa lowered her gaze to the small succulent plant on her desk. It was the first gift from James. "James is a good man. I think I can be happy with him." Barbara sighed. "Happiness is temporary, Melissa. I never thought you'd be the biggest disappointment in the family. But well, it's your choice." After hanging up, Melissa felt something tightening in her chest. Always criticized, always told she wasn't enough. But she had the courage to choose a different life. That evening, Melissa visited her sister Vanessa's apartment. The view from the top floor of the high-rise was breathtaking, but her sister's cold expression froze the air in the room. "Engaged? To him?" Vanessa said, tilting her wine glass. "You really have no ambition." Melissa sat on the sofa, gazing at the shelf decorated with photos of her niece, Sarah. "I love James." Vanessa laughed. "Love is just brain chemistry. It doesn't last." She stood up and walked to the window. "Look at this Manhattan skyline. This is my love. This is what I've achieved. I'm happy." Vanessa turned around and looked down at Melissa. Her beautiful face twisted into a sneer. "You've always consoled yourself with that word, happy. But face reality. The man you've chosen will spend his life selling other people's houses. I, on the other hand." "I know," Melissa said quietly. "You're successful. We hear about it every day." Vanessa's expression turned uncomfortable. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just..." She hesitated for a moment, as if searching for words. "I just think you could do better." Before leaving the apartment, Melissa tried to show her engagement ring, but Vanessa merely said, "Show me later." She met her brother Brian at his surf shop. The San Diego sunlight illuminated his tan skin, and Melissa always envied the sense of freedom her brother possessed. "Congratulations," Brian gave her a light hug. But the embrace was brief and somehow formal. "But honestly, I understand what Mom and Vanessa are saying." Melissa stared at the beach and whispered, "You too?" "Sis, I just..." he said, making footprints in the sand. "Is there anything special about James? He loves me. Isn't that enough?" Brian shrugged. "Sure. But we're the Johnsons. We should aim higher." Melissa smiled bitterly at her brother's words. The term, the Johnsons, sounded as if they were royalty. Her family was merely middle class, but Barbara's dreamy social ambitions had permeated her children. As she prepared for the wedding, Melissa had the opportunity to meet James's parents. They welcomed her warmly. Especially James's mother, Abigail, who embraced her with a warmth Melissa had never felt from her own mother. "I'm glad you chose James," Abigail said with a quiet smile. That night, back in her hotel room, Melissa looked at her engagement ring and cried. Why couldn't her family be happy for her? Why were her choices always deemed not enough? But meeting James's parents gave her a small hope. Maybe on her wedding day, her family would open their hearts. Maybe seeing her happiness would help them understand the true meaning of family. With that thought, she carefully placed wedding invitations in envelopes. 3 invitations for her mother, sister, and brother. Each contained her wishes for a new life. The soft June sunlight streamed through the windows, creating enchanting lines of light in the venue. Melissa, dressed in an elegant wedding gown, stood in front of a large window. Her skin glowed faintly with nervousness and anticipation, her eyes reflecting a mix of anxiety and hope. She checked her watch repeatedly and gazed out the window. They should be here soon, she murmured softly. The special seats prepared in the front row were still empty. A small sign on a tripod saying "Family Seats" accentuated the loneliness of the empty chairs. Wedding planner Jessica entered the room. "Melissa, the ceremony begins in 15 minutes. Are you ready?" Melissa forced a smile. "Yes, I'm fine. It's just, my family hasn't arrived yet." Jessica nodded kindly. "It might be traffic." "Don't worry, they'll make it in time." Melissa clutched her smartphone and looked out the window again. The clear blue sky of San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge visible in the distance. Everything was perfect for the day. Except for one thing. The door opened, and James entered wearing a white tuxedo. His face showed signs of concern. "Melissa, are you okay?" He gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "Your family?" Melissa pushed back her hair with a trembling hand. "I still haven't heard from them. They're not answering their phones." "They'll come," James tried to embrace her gently, taking care not to wrinkle her dress. "There must be a reason." Melissa looked into James's eyes. His gaze reflected worry and a somewhat sad understanding. He knew a lot about her family. The criticism she had received, the cold attitudes, and how she had always been told she was not enough. "I'll try calling one more time," Melissa said, her fingers trembling as she operated her smartphone. She first called her sister Vanessa. After 3 rings, her cold voice came through. "Vanessa? Where are you?" "The ceremony is about to start," Melissa tried to maintain a cheerful voice. From the other end of the phone, Vanessa's laughter could be heard. A cold, icy laugh. "Oh, was that today?" Melissa was momentarily speechless. "I sent you an invitation, didn't I? I called to confirm 3 weeks ago." "Yes," Vanessa's voice was like a cold winter wind. "But you'll probably be divorced soon anyway, so it's a waste of time." Melissa's heart skipped a beat. "What are you saying?" "Face reality. Someone like you can't have a happy marriage. Mom said so too." Melissa was at a loss for words and simply hung up. James stood by her side and held her hand. "Are you okay?" Melissa shook her head and next called her mother. Barbara's phone rang 4 times before she answered. "Melissa? Oh, was that today?" Barbara's voice sounded distant and somehow flippant. "I'm in Paris now, enjoying champagne while gazing at the Eiffel Tower. Don't bother me with such trivial matters." "Paris?" Melissa's voice cracked. "Listen, Melissa," Barbara's voice suddenly turned cold. "Grow up. No one cares about your wedding. Especially with that, what was his name again? James? Your marriage to him." Melissa hung up without a word. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks. With one last hope, she called Brian. He answered after 2 rings. "Where are you?" "The ceremony is about to begin." "I'm sorry." Brian's voice had a tinge of regret, but it was still cold. "There's a surfing competition. And if Mom and Vanessa aren't going, I won't go either." "Sorry." After the call ended, Melissa just stood there. Her wedding dress reflected the morning light, but her heart sank into darkness. James took her hand and said quietly, "Let's move forward without family." "My family is your family now." Melissa wiped her tears. Do you really think so? Of course, he kissed her hand. Today is the start of a new beginning. Let's leave the past behind. The ceremony began as scheduled. Melissa walked down the aisle, escorted by James's father. She looked around at the audience. There were many faces, James's family, friends, and her few friends. But the faces she most wanted to see weren't there. After exchanging vows, James's father Robert suddenly stood up. He was a tall, dignified man. From today, Melissa is a precious member of our family, his voice echoed throughout the venue. In the name of the Hamilton family, those who have hurt her will face consequences. Melissa looked at him in surprise. Hamilton family? At that moment, James whispered in her ear, I didn't tell you, but my father is the CEO of Hamilton Enterprises. I'm also set to take on an important position in the company. Melissa gasped. Hamilton Enterprises. One of America's leading corporations. Various dots began connecting in her mind. James's occasional disappearances for long business trips, his sophisticated demeanor, and why he never asked much about her family. Why didn't you tell me? Melissa asked softly. I wanted to protect you, James quietly replied. I wanted to make sure you loved me for who I am, not for my name or status. James's mother embraced her. You have value. Those who abandoned you will eventually regret it. At the end of the ceremony, Melissa and James exchanged a kiss of commitment. Warm applause erupted from the audience. Melissa said with a determined expression, James, I'm so happy to have met you. Let's make our new life the best it can be. James smiled. I've seen clearly today what kind of people your family are. I won't let them hurt you anymore. Amidst tears and laughter in James's arms, Melissa whispered, the beginning of my new life, and the beginning of a small revenge on my family. A flame of determination burned in her eyes. 6 months had passed. In her office on the top floor of Hamilton Tower, one of the most eye-catching skyscrapers in San Francisco, Melissa gazed out the window. The entire city seemed to spread out at her feet. Her life had completely changed in these 6 months. Once an employee at a mid-sized real estate company, she was now the head of public relations at Hamilton Enterprises. A young female assistant entered her office. We're ready for the interview. Melissa took a deep breath and checked her appearance in the window glass. A silk blouse with a perfectly fitting skirt. Her hair was elegantly styled, and her rings were modest yet luxurious. She smiled at herself. Thank you. Let's go. On the first floor of Hamilton Tower, a local news crew was waiting. As Melissa stepped out of the elevator, the cameramen and staff turned their attention to her. She approached them with a confident walk she had never imagined possible before. Thank you for your time today, a female reporter extended her hand toward Melissa. For our community feature, we'd like to hear about Hamilton Enterprises' social contribution activities. Melissa smiled gracefully. Thank you for having me. They were guided to a beautifully furnished lounge in the building. As the cameras started rolling, the interview began. As Mrs. Hamilton and the face of the corporation, please tell us about giving back to the community, the reporter asked her. Melissa responded with a serene expression, I've been fortunate to be blessed with a wonderful husband and a new family. Life takes unexpected turns. I'm especially grateful to those who taught me what a true family means. She smiled at the camera. There was a hidden strength in that smile. At Hamilton Enterprises, we've launched a new family support program. It's a fund specifically to support those who have been hurt by emotional abuse or neglect. Family isn't just about blood ties, it's about relationships where people respect and value each other. I personally experienced being abandoned by my own family on my wedding day, but I've overcome that pain and learned the true meaning of family. The reporter showed a surprised expression. That must have been a difficult experience. Melissa nodded quietly. It was certainly painful. But it gave me strength. Now, I want to empower others who have had similar experiences. The interview continued for 30 minutes, with Melissa speaking calmly about the company's social contributions and her own experiences. After the cameras stopped, the reporter approached her. "Thank you so much for your wonderful story. Your story will inspire many people." Melissa held her hand. "Thank you. I'd be happy if I could help even one person." Back at the office, James was waiting for her. He smiled proudly when he saw her. "You were magnificent, Melissa," he kissed her. "How was the interview?" "Smoother than I expected," Melissa smiled in his arms. "How are the preparations for the social media campaign?" James nodded. "Everything's on track. We're planning to start tomorrow. We'll share photos from your wedding and messages about family bonds." "Including photos of a wedding where no family came?" Melissa looked at him. "If that's what you want," James answered with a serious expression. "But if it's too painful?" Melissa shook her head. "No, that's important. By sharing the truth, we can give hope to others who are experiencing similar feelings." The next day, Hamilton Enterprises launched a major social media campaign. Along with photos from Melissa and James's wedding, they shared a message about what true family means. It included the truth that her family didn't attend the wedding. The campaign generated a huge response, with many people empathizing with Melissa's experience. Her interview was broadcast nationwide, and her presence and status as the wife of a corporate executive became widely known. Her story was featured in news outlets across the country, sparking discussions about what family means. Meanwhile, criticism poured in against her actual family. One morning, Melissa received an email at her office. She gasped when she saw the sender's name. It was from Vanessa. "Dear Melissa, I saw your news recently. I had no idea you held such a position. Why didn't you tell me? I'm sorry about that day. I really was planning to come. But I had an important meeting that day. How are you? Looking forward to hearing from you. Vanessa." Melissa read the email twice. Then she laughed quietly. A lie. On her wedding day, Vanessa had said, "You'll probably be divorced soon anyway." She decided not to reply. The following week, Melissa received a call from a friend. "Melissa, you won't believe it. I heard your mother has been gradually distanced by her friends since returning from Paris. Everyone's asking her, 'I saw your daughter on TV. A corporate executive's wife. Is it true you didn't go to the wedding?' Melissa said nothing. She just felt a small satisfaction spreading in her chest. Around the same time, Vanessa began to be repeatedly questioned by customers at the high-end boutique where she worked. "Are you the sister of that Hamilton woman? Why didn't you go to the wedding?" Gradually, the number of customers decreased, and she started receiving cold glances from the store manager. Changes also came to her brother Brian. The surf brand he had a sponsorship contract with suddenly terminated it. He was told, "We can't do business with companies associated with Hamilton Enterprises." Barbara no longer received invitations to social gatherings, Vanessa lost her job, and Brian lost his sponsors. The three of them were in dire financial and social straits. One evening, Melissa's smartphone rang. Vanessa's name appeared on the screen. Melissa hesitated for a moment but answered the call. "Melissa?" Vanessa's voice no longer had its previous coldness, instead, it sounded somewhat anxious. "I saw you on TV recently. You're amazing. By the way." Melissa interrupted her. "You thought my wedding would be a waste of time because I'd probably be divorced soon, right? Unfortunately, I'm having a happy marriage. Do you need something?" "No, I just wanted to see how my sister was doing," Vanessa tried to cover up. "Really? Or is there something you want from Mrs. Hamilton?" Melissa calmly asked. Vanessa fell silent and hung up. Melissa put down her smartphone and gazed out the window. The San Francisco skyline reflecting in her eyes was the same as 6 months ago. But she herself had changed drastically. No longer a small existence suffering from family expectations and criticism, she had become a strong woman carving out her own destiny. James embraced her from behind. "No regrets?" Melissa smiled in his arms. No, not at all. This isn't revenge, it's justice. Just letting the world know what they did to me. A year had passed. Melissa and James had established a mansion in an upscale residential area in the suburbs of San Francisco. Melissa stood by the window, gazing at the flowers blooming in the garden. A year ago today, she had her wedding without family. That pain was still deep in her heart, but it no longer dominated her. Thinking? James stood beside her and put his arm around her shoulder. Melissa smiled. A little. I was remembering what happened a year ago. James kissed her on the cheek. You've become so strong this past year. Melissa nodded, gazing out the window. Yes. But sometimes I wonder how they're doing. Do you want to know? James quietly asked. Melissa looked at her husband. Do you know? I had them investigated, James smiled a bit apologetically. For your happiness. He handed her some documents. They detailed the current situations of Barbara, Vanessa, and Brian. Barbara had been completely ostracized from society, had to give up her luxurious apartment, and moved into a small room. Vanessa had lost her job at the high-end boutique, drifted from job to job without lasting long, and now lived in a cheap apartment in a small town. Brian had lost his surfing sponsors, accumulated debt, and was sleeping on a friend's sofa. So much. Melissa choked on her words. Just as you intended, James said quietly. There was no hint of blame in his voice. They hurt you. Now they're facing the consequences. Melissa pressed her forehead against the window. The cold glass seemed to absorb her heat. Is this what I wanted? Only you can decide that, James held her hand. That afternoon, while Melissa was reading in the garden, she received word from the caretaker that she had visitors. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson are here to see you. Melissa caught her breath. Show them in. When she entered the living room, Barbara, Vanessa, and Brian were standing there. All three looked vastly different from how Melissa remembered them. Barbara's hair had turned white, and her shoulders were rounded. Vanessa's beauty had faded, and her face showed signs of hardship. Brian was thin, and his tanned skin lacked vitality. It's been a while, Barbara looked at her daughter with a forced smile. The superiority in her eyes was gone, replaced by anxiety and fear. What a lovely home. Melissa responded calmly. With a quiet strength, she offered them chairs. Sit down. Would you like something to drink? No, that's fine, Vanessa quickly said. Do you have some business here? Melissa asked with a smile. Her voice was gentle, but her gaze was sharp. No, I just wanted to see my daughter. Barbara's words trailed off. Her hands were trembling. Really? Or are you interested in my new status? Melissa sat gracefully in a chair. Her silk dress reflected the light and gleamed. A heavy silence filled the room. Finally, Brian spoke up. Sis, I'll be honest. We're in trouble. Barbara glared at her son, but he continued, there's no point in hiding it. We've all lost our jobs, been abandoned by friends. That's unfortunate, Melissa said evenly. But what can I do about it? Finally, Barbara sighed. Melissa, help us. Her voice was trembling. Friends are avoiding me, and I've been shut out of society. Vanessa added, I can't find work either, no one will hire me. When I call, they just say, Mrs. Hamilton's sister. The one who didn't go to the wedding. Brian bowed his head. I'm drowning in debt, all my sponsors cut me off. Everyone says they can't do business with anyone connected to Hamilton Enterprises. Melissa took a deep breath and calmly replied, I see, so what do you want me to do? We want you to help us with your influence, Barbara pleaded. Tears welled up in her eyes. With just a word from you, everything could change. Oh, wasn't it you who said, don't bother me with such trivial matters? Melissa repeated her mother's words sarcastically. Her voice was cold, but her eyes showed sadness. Barbara covered her face with both hands. About that day. I'm sorry. But I didn't know you were the wife of such a major corporation's executive. Melissa stood up and walked to the window. So if you had known, you would have come to the wedding? The three fell silent. That silence seemed like an answer to Melissa. What do you think family is? Melissa turned and asked. Blood ties, Barbara answered immediately. No, Melissa's voice was strong, yet tinged with sadness. It's the people who support me and recognize my value. Your not coming to the wedding was a big blow to me. But at the same time, it taught me who my true family is. Melissa stood before the three. I forgive you. Barbara and Vanessa's eyes widened. Brian looked up. But forgiveness and regaining trust are different things, Melissa continued. It takes time to rebuild trust. Go home today. When you're truly sorry and ready to become a true family, come back. But our situation? Vanessa said weakly. Aren't you adults? Melissa said calmly. Accepting the consequences of your choices is also an adult's duty. Barbara and the others were speechless and left with expressions of humiliation and regret. After the door closed, Melissa stood by the window and watched her family's car drive away. Her feelings were complex. The sweet taste of revenge mixed with the sadness of losing her family. James quietly entered the room. Are you okay? Melissa turned from the window and gave a weak smile. Yes. That was tough, James placed his hand on her shoulder. It was necessary, Melissa said quietly. But this isn't the end. What do you mean? True strength is the power to forgive, Melissa said, gazing out the window. But trust isn't easily regained. They need time and effort. And I also need time to fully forgive. Melissa and James stood with their arms linked, gazing out the window. In the suburbs of San Francisco, Melissa and James's garden was decorated for Christmas. Vibrant lights adorned the trees, and the cold winter air carried the scent of cinnamon and pie. 5 years after their marriage, they had a 3-year-old daughter, Elizabeth. With golden curls and blue eyes, Elizabeth had inherited Melissa's features and James's smile. Melissa was making final preparations for dinner in the kitchen. She had been promoted to vice president of Hamilton Enterprises and had established a charity foundation supporting families. Her work gave hope to many families and helped repair family relationships. Mom, when are Grandma and the others coming? Elizabeth asked in a small voice. She wore a red velvet dress and looked like a little Christmas angel. Melissa gently stroked her daughter's head. Soon, Elizabeth. Are you looking forward to it? Elizabeth nodded energetically. Yes. Grandma always gives me presents. But is it true that you and Grandma weren't close in the past? Melissa was momentarily at a loss for words. Children's straightforward questions sometimes confound adults. Yes, we had a somewhat difficult relationship in the past. But people can change. The doorbell rang, and Elizabeth ran with her little feet. They're here. When the door opened, Barbara was standing there. Her once haughty attitude was gone, replaced by a gentle smile. Melissa, Elizabeth, Merry Christmas. Barbara lived alone in a small apartment. Abandoned by her former friends and completely disappeared from society, her expression no longer showed the vanity of before, but instead a quiet acceptance. She was occasionally invited to Melissa's charity events and truly cherished the time spent with her granddaughter Elizabeth. Next to arrive was Brian. He appeared in a suit with a neat hairstyle. Sis, Merry Christmas, he said with a humble smile. With Melissa's help, Brian had repaid his debts and started working for a subcontractor of Hamilton Enterprises. He worked diligently and continued to make sincere efforts to repair his relationship with his sister. Finally, Vanessa arrived. Her flashy demeanor was gone, replaced by the image of a composed adult woman. Melissa, Elizabeth, it's been a while. Vanessa had moved to a small town in the countryside and started a new life as a hairdresser. Although she struggled to repair her relationship with Melissa, they had begun to keep in touch several times a year. She confessed to the locals, I'm ashamed I looked down on my sister, and was learning to live humbly. The Christmas dinner table was bathed in warm light. However, a faint tension lingered in the air. The conversation was polite but not heartfelt. Toward the end of the meal, Barbara suddenly stood up. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "Melissa, I want to apologize to you. I was a terrible mother. I didn't recognize your value and hurt you. But you've become a much better person than I am. You don't have to forgive me, I just want you to know that I'm proud of you." The room fell silent. James and Elizabeth looked at Melissa. Melissa took her mother's hand and gently squeezed it. "Mom, we can't change the past, but we can create the future. Elizabeth has only one grandmother. Let's create a new family history together." Late that night, after everyone had left, Melissa was writing in her diary in the study. "The day of my wedding, when my family didn't come, was one of the most painful experiences of my life. But now I'm grateful. Without that day, I wouldn't have known my own strength or the true meaning of family. I learned that forgiveness ultimately fills the heart more than revenge. And above all, that my value is not determined by others." Melissa smiled as she gazed at the sunset visible from the window. "My family who skipped my wedding, but in the end, we all managed to find new bonds.